Hello, what's up guys? My name is Ghazan Fali and today in this video we are going to discuss about the second topic of our search engine optimization learning journey playlist, and the topic is how search engine works. This will include the concepts such as crawling, indexing and ranking. If you haven't watched the first topic, that was what is SEO and why it is important, I highly recommend you to go and watch that video first, because this second video is the extension of the first video. So all of these concepts will only make sense to you if you already have watched the first video. So let's get started. The first thing is that you have to understand that how do search engine work. Search engine works through three primary functions, that are crawling, indexing and ranking. Crawlers crawl the internet for content, and they always look for the code and content for each URL they find. This is called the crawling in simplest term. In the simplest terms of indexing, this includes to store and organize the content found during the crawling process. Once a page is in the index, it's in the running to be displayed as a result to relevant queries. Then the third phase is the ranking phase. Ranking phase provides a piece of content that will be best answer of a searcher's query, which means that results are ordered by the most relevant to least relevant order. Then you might wonder that what is search engine crawling? Crawling is the discovery process in which search engine send out a team of robots known as crawlers or spiders to find new and updated content on any website. Content can vary. It could be web page, an image, a video, a PDF or anything. But regardless of the format, content is discovered by links. Googlebot starts out by fetching a few web pages and then follow the links on those web pages to find new URLs. By hopping along this path of links, the crawler is able to find new content and add it to their index called Caffeine, a massive database of discovered URLs, to later be retrieved when a searcher is seeking information that the content on that URL is a good match for. That is the result of the query that user will make when he will go to search engine and insert his query. Now, what is a search engine index? Search engine process and stores information they find in an index, a huge database of all the content they have discovered and deemed good enough to serve up to the searches. Search engine rankings includes when someone performs a search. Search engines scour their index for highly relevant content and then order that content in the hopes of solving the searcher's query. This ordering of search results by relevant is known as ranking. In general, you can assume that the higher a website is ranked, the more relevant the search engine believes that site is to the query. It's possible to block search engine crawlers from a part or all of your site, or instruct search engines to avoid storing certain pages in their index. While there can be reasons for doing this, if you want your content found by searchers, you have to first make sure it's accessible to crawlers and is indexable. Otherwise, it's good as invisible. By the end of this chapter, or by the end of this video, you will have the context you need to work with the search engine rather than against it. Now, the first phase, that was crawling. Crawling means can search engines find your pages? One way to check your index pages is if you go to search engine like google.com and enter this command like site colon your domain name.com. This is an advanced search operator. This head to Google and type all of these things, and it will bring out all the web pages that are indexed on the search engine like Google. If you are not showing up anywhere in search result, there are a few possible reasons why. Your site is brand new and hasn't been crawled yet. Otherwise, your site is not linked to from any external website, or your site's navigation makes it hard for a robot to crawl it effectively. Your site contains some basic codes called crawler directives that is blocking search engine, or Your site has been penalized by Google for spammy tactics. Now, tell search engines how to crawl your site. If you used Google Search Console and use the advanced search operator and found that some of your important pages are missing from the index, and or some of your important pages have been mistakenly indexed, there are some optimizations you can implement to better direct Google bots. How you want your web pages content to be crawled in the search result. Telling search engines how to crawl your site can give you better control of what ends up in the index. Most people think about making sure Google can include their important pages, but it's easy to forget that there are likely pages you don't want Google bots to be find. These might include things like old URLs that have thin content, duplicate URLs such as sort and filter parameter for e-commerce store, special promo code pages, staging or test pages, and so on. To direct Googlebot away from certain pages and sections of your site, use robots.txt file. Now, what is robot.txt file? Robot.txt file are located in the root directory of your website. For example, your domain name.com slash robots.txt, and suggests which parts of your site search engines should and should not crawl, as well as the speed at which they crawl your site via specific robot.txt directives. How Googlebot treat robot.txt file? If Googlebot can find a robot.txt file for a site, it proceeds to crawl the site. If Googlebot finds a robot.txt file for a site, it will usually abide by the suggestion and proceed to crawl the site. If in case Googlebot encounters an error while trying to access a site's robot.txt file and can determine if one exists or not, it won't crawl the site. So it is important that you understand the feature of robot.txt file as well. Next up, we are defining URL parameters in Google Search Console. Some sites, most common with e-commerce functionality, make the same content available on multiple different URLs by appending certain parameters to URL. If you have ever shopped online, you have likely narrowed down your search via filters. How does Google know which version of the URL to serve to the searches? Google does a pretty good job at figuring out the representative URL on its own, but you can use the URL parameter feature in Google Search Console to tell Google exactly how you want them to treat your pages. If you use this feature to tell Googlebot crawl no URLs with dash parameter, then you are essentially asking to hide this content from Googlebot, which could result in the removal of those pages from search results. That's what you want if those parameters create duplicate pages, but not ideal if you want those pages to be indexed. Can crawlers find all of your important content? This is an interesting question. Now that you know that some tactics for ensuring search engine crawlers stay away from your unimportant content, let's learn about optimizations that can help Googlebot find your important pages. Sometimes a search engine will be able to find parts of your sites by crawling, but other pages or sections might be obscured for one reason or another. It's important to make sure that search engines are able to discover all the content you want to be indexed and not just your homepage. Is your content hidden behind login forms? If you require users to log in, fill out forms, or answer surveys before accessing certain content, search engine won't see those protected pages. A crawler is definitely not going to log into your website. Are you relying on search form? Robots cannot use search forms. Some individuals believe that if they place a search box on their site, search engines will be able to find everything that their website visitors will search for. Now, this is not correct. Is text hidden within non-text content? Non-text media forms like images, videos, GIFs, orchestra should not be used to display text that you wish to be indexed. While search engines are getting better at recognizing images, there's no guarantee they will be able to read and understand it just yet. It's important And always best to add text within the HTML tag markup of your web page. Can search engine follow your site navigation? Just as a crawler needs to discover your site via links from other sites, it needs a path of links on your own sites to guide it from page to page. If you have got a page you want search engines to find, but it is not linked to any other pages, it's as good as invisible. Many sites make the critical mistake of structuring their navigation in a way that they are inaccessible to search engines, hindering their ability to get listed in search results. Common navigation mistake that can keep crawlers from seeing all of your website includes having a mobile navigation that shows different results than your desktop navigation, or any other type of navigation where the menu items are not in HTML, such as JavaScript enabled navigation. Google has gotten much better at crawling and understanding JavaScript, but it's still not a perfect process. The more surefire way to ensure something gets found, understood, and indexed by Google is by putting it in HTML. Personalization or showing unique navigation to a specific type of visitor versus others could appear to be cloaking to the search engine crawlers. We already have discussed about cloaking in the first part of this series. For Forgetting to link a primary page on your website through your navigation, remember there are paths crawler follow to the new pages. This is why it is essential that your website has a clear navigation and helpful URL folder structures. Do you have clean information architecture on your website? Information architecture is the practice of organizing and labeling content on a website to improve efficiency and findability for user. The best information architecture is intuitive, meaning that users should not have to think very hard to flow through your website or to find something. Are you utilizing sitemap? A sitemap is just what it sounds like, a list of URLs on your website that crawlers can use to discover and index your content. One of the easiest way to ensure Google is finding your highest priority pages is to create a file that meets Google standard and submit it through Google Search Console. While submitting a sitemap does not replace the need of Google Site Navigation, it can certainly help crawlers follow a path to all of your important pages. If your site does not have any other sites linking to it, you still might be able to get it indexed by submitting your XML sitemap in Google Search Console. Are crawlers getting errors when they try to access your URL? In the process of crawling the URLs on your site, a crawler may encounter errors. You can go to Google Search Console's crawl errors section to check the report that detected URLs on which this might be happening. This report will show you server errors and not found errors. Server log files can only show you this as well as a treasure trove of other information such as crawl frequency. But because accessing and dissecting server log files is more advanced tactic, before you can do anything meaningful with the crawl error report, it is important to understand server errors and not found errors. So 4xx codes or 4xx errors. When search engine crawlers can't access your content due to a client error. 4xx error are client errors, meaning the requested URL contains bad syntax or cannot be fulfilled. One of the most common 4xx error is 404 not found error. These might occur because of a URL typo, deleted page, or broken redirect, just to name a few example of reason of this 404 not found error. When search engine hit a 404, they can't access the URL. When user hit a 404, they can got frustrated and leave. Next up, we have 5xx codes or 5xx errors. When search engine crawlers can't access your content due to server errors. 5xx errors are server errors, meaning the web page is located on failed to fulfill the searcher or search engine's request to access the web page. In Google Search Console crawl error reports, there is a tab dedicated to these errors. We'll check all of these tabs later when we'll move toward the practical implication of SEO. These typically happen because the request of the URL timed out, so Googlebot abandoned the request. View Google's documentation to learn more about fixing server connectivity issues. Thankfully, there is a way to tell both searchers and search engine that your page has been moved, and that is 301 permanent redirects. Search engine and users need a bridge to cross from old URL to the new URL. That bridge is called the 301 redirects. Now, here are some of the main features when you do implement a 301 and when you don't implement a 301. So the first thing is link equity. You implement the link equity when you transfers link equity from the page old location to the new location, and you don't implement the 301 when the authority from the previous URL is not passed on the new version of the URL. Next factor is indexing factor. You do implement 301 in indexing and it helps Google find and index the new version of the web page. And you don't implement a 301 in the presence of 404 errors on your site. It don't harm search performance, but letting ranking traffic if traffic pages 404 can result in them falling out of index with ranking and traffic going with them. So means you are losing your ranking or search engine. The third factor is user experience. You do implement a 301 to ensure that user find the page they are looking for, and you don't implement a 301 to not to allow your visitor to click on dead links will take them to an error page instead of intended pages, which can be frustrating. Indexing. How do search engine interpret and store your pages? Once you have ensured your site has been crawled, the next order of business is to make sure it can be indexed. That's right. Just because your site can be discovered and crawled by a search engine doesn't necessarily mean that it will be stored in their index. In the previous section of crawling, we discussed how search engine discover your web pages. The index is where you discover pages are stored. After a crawler finds a page, the search engine renders it just like a browser would. In the process of doing so, the search engine analyzes that page content. All of that information is stored in its index. Also, can I see how a Googlebot crawler sees my pages? Yes, the cached version of your page will reflect a snapshot of the last time Googlebot crawled it. Google crawls and caches web pages at different frequencies. Most more established well-known sites that post frequently like newyorktimes.com will be crawled more frequently than the much less famous websites such as rogerlovescupcakes.com. You can view what your cached version of a page look like by clicking the drop down arrow next to the URL in the search engine results pages and choosing cached. Also, are pages ever removed from index? Yes, pages can be removed from the index. Some of the main reasons why a URL might be removed include the URL is returning a not found error 4xx or server error 5xx. This could be accidental. The page was moved and 301 redirect was not set up by you, or it is intentional. The page was deleted and 404 in order to get it removed from the index. The URL had a no index meta tag added. This tag can be added by the site owner to instruct the search engine to omit the page from its index. The URL has been manually penalized for violating the search engine's webmaster guidelines and as a result was removed from the index. The URL has been blocked from crawling the addition with the addition of password required before visitor can access the page. Tell search engine how to index your site yourself. This can be happen with the robots meta directives and robot meta tags. Now, what is robot meta directive? Robot meta directives or meta tags are instructions you can give to search engines regarding how you want your web page to be treated. You can tell search engine crawlers things like do not index this page in the search results or don't pass any link equity to any on page links. These instructions are executed via robot meta tags in the head tag of your HTML pages or via the X robot tag in the HTTP headers. After, what is robots meta tag? The robots meta tag can be used within the head tag of the HTML of your web page. It can exclude all or specific search engines. The following are the most common meta directives along with what situations you might apply them in. Index or no index tells the engines whether the page should be crawled and kept in the search engine. Index from retrieval. After you opt to use no index, you are communicating to crawlers that you want the page to be excluded from search results. By default, search engines assume they can index all pages, so using the index value is unnecessary. Robots meta tag. When you might opt to mark a page as no index if you are trying to trim thin page from Google's index of your website. Follow and no follow. Follow and no follow tell search engines whether link on the page should be followed or no followed. Follow result in the bot following the links on your page and passing link equity through to those URLs, or if you elect to employ no follow, the search engine will not follow or pass any link equity through to the links on the page. By default, all pages are assumed to have the follow attribute. No follow is often used together with the no index when you are trying to prevent a page from being indexed as well as prevent the crawlers from following links on the page. If you run an e-commerce site and your prices change regularly, you might consider the non-archive tag to prevent searchers from seeing outdated pricing. Now, X-robot tags. The X-robot tags is used within the HTTP headers of your URL, providing more flexibility and functionality than meta tags. If you want to block search engines at scale, because you can use regular expressions, block known HTML files, and apply site-wide non-index tags. For example, you could easily exclude entire folder or file types like youramazingwebsite.com /no bake /old recipes to no index colon. Here is the visual example of this X-robot tag. The next factor and the final factor is ranking. How do search engines rank URLs? How do search engines ensure that when someone types a query into the search bar, they get relevant results in return? That process is known as ranking, or the ordering of search results by most relevant to the least relevant to a particular query. To determine relevance, search engines use algorithms, a process of or formula by which stored information is retrieved and ordered in meaningful way. These algorithms have gone through many changes over the years in order to improve the quality of search results. Google, for example, makes algorithm adjustments every day. Some of those updates are minor quality tweaks, whereas others are core or broad algorithm updates deployed to tackle a specific issue like Penguin to tackle link spam. Again, what do search engine want? At first, their understanding of the language is very rudimentary. See, spot, and run. Over time, their understanding starts to deepen and they learn semantic, the meaning behind language, and the relationship between the words and phrases. Eventually, with enough practice, the student knows the language well enough to even understand nouns and is able to provide answers to even vague and incomplete questions. When search engines were just beginning to learn our language, It was much easier to game the system by using tricks and tactics that actually go against quality guidelines. Take keyword stuffing for example. If you wanted to rank for a particular keyword like funny jokes, you might add the word funny jokes a bunch of time onto your page and make it bold. It hopes for boosting your ranking for that term. You can see this in this example here. Funny jokes is in a bold format. This tactic made for terrible user experience, and instead of laughing at funny jokes, people were bombarded by annoying, hard to read text. It may have worked in the past, but it is never what search engine wanted. The role link plays in SEO. When we talk about links, we could mean two things. Backlinks or inbound links are links from other websites that point to your website, while internal links are links on your own website that points to your other pages on the same website. Links have historically played a big role in SEO. Very early on, search engines needed help figuring out which URLs were more trustworthy than others to help them determine how to rank search results. Calculating the number of links pointing to any given site helped them do this. Backlink work very similarly to real life WOM, word of mouth referrals. Let's take a hypothetical coffee shop, Jack's Coffee, as an example. A referral from others is equal to good sign of authority. For example, many different people have all told you that Jack's Coffee is best in the town. Now this is referral from other and have a good sign of authority. Then a referral from yourself. It can be biased, so not a good sign for authority. For example, Jack's claim that Jack's Coffee is best in the town. It's because you are saying it yourself, so you might be biased for this statement. Referrals from irrelevant or low quality sources, not a good sign of authority, and could even get you flagged for spam. For example, Jack paid to have people who have never visited his coffee shop tell other how good it is. It is just like you give money to people and tell them to provide and spread good words for your services or products in the market. It is called the spamming. And the final, you have no referrals or unclear authority. For example, Jack's Coffee might be good, but you have been unable to find anyone who has an opinion, so you can't be shared. These are all the things that you have to understand regarding to how search engine works. So we discussed about all of these three factors that were including the crawling factors, indexing factor, and ranking factor. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I'll